It was recorded on French soil, but not a message to the French people. Not that one, not the one on the painting. It was a first in history. The original stamping, as well as 4 other duplicating masters, were secreted away to different locations in France and England, for good reason. Each was placed on a separate ship and sent across the Atlantic 100 years ago. America entered World War I on April 6, 1917. General John J. Pershing of Laclede, Missouri, crossed the Atlantic in civilian clothing, and likely under an assumed name. Arriving safely, he put on his uniform and went to work. He is assigned the awesome responsibility of taking America's boys to the aid of the weary Allies, as chief of the American Expeditionary Force. At the same time, another Missourian is completing a remarkable civic feat in St. Louis. Verdi's Aida, a week of grand opera that opened the largest outdoor theater in America during an international convention. In the fall, he also travels, but to Washington, D.C., to see how he can help. With a proven record in signing and presenting opera stars, conductors, and other classical artists, as well as undertaking big projects, Guy Golterman will arrange for the best in the music field to appear at Liberty Loan rallies. How would a general and a grand opera impresario from opposite sides of a Midwestern state connect at a crucial time in world history?
The idea of recording for posterity the spoken utterances of world leaders and warriors first came to me as I looked at the facsimile of Washington's farewell address and Lincoln's Gettysburg Address at the Library of Congress. I profoundly wished that their voices could have been preserved so that today the children of every schoolhouse in the land could hear their immortal words.
Golterman considered this a loss and experienced a moment of regret. Then he went to, or back to, the U.S. Committee on Information and said, "Let's change this." They agreed and created the Nations Forum. The young, growing recording industry turned out recordings of opera stars and orchestras, blues and jazz and popular music greats, and it was selling lots of record players. Trial, error, improve. A lot of experimentation. Recording important statements or pronouncements of U.S. and world leaders is bigger than preparing an opera season. The organizational, creative, and production challenges were broader, but one thing was the same: the right team. Golterman set up the Nations Forum operation in New York and lived at the New York Athletic Club. The Forum launched a 2-year project in 1918 to capture in real voices many of the most important statements of the times, most critical times. The Forum tracks and updates a near-endless list of important speeches, from the president to a future president, from cabinet members, congressmen, and ambassadors to foreign countries, to business and civic leaders, as well as new leaders emerging in dramatic fashion. The Nations Forum engages the services of Columbia Graphophone Company in Bridgeport, Connecticut. These are the pioneers in the records business. Instead of recording speeches before crowds, Golterman decides to bring the notables into recording studios or other places where the environment could be controlled. The messages were kept to 3 minutes or less. Recording was activated by the voice, unamplified, so speakers had to shout into the horn. This provided as high a quality as possible, and that quality can be enjoyed today. At Columbia, the recordings are produced in quantity. They are labeled, packaged, and shipped to order. Those designated for radio broadcast flow into that stream. That was the plan, and the plan worked. Most of the time. The big exception to this process is the most important. General John J. Pershing, leader of the American Expeditionary Forces in France, with his troops. How to record the general. Who better to address the American people as our soldiers go into battle? To calm the nation, steel its will, to urge us to support our troops and go to work on the home front. A delegation from the Forum travels to France with a recording crew to find the general. However, from field headquarters, "I'm a soldier, not an orator." No, a rather emphatic no. Then, Secretary of War Newton Baker, who himself travels to the front, urges Pershing to do it. Baker tells the general that he is the one to speak to the American people, the voice we need to hear. No became yes. On April 4, 1918, General John J. Pershing at field headquarters peers curiously at a strange-looking device, then, as asked, speaks into it.
3,000 miles from home, an American army is fighting for you. Everything you hold worthwhile is at stake. Only the hardest blows can win against the enemy we are fighting. Invoking the spirit of our forefathers, the Army asks your unflinching support to the end that the high ideals for which America stands may endure upon the earth.
The recorded master and 4 safeties are quickly scattered to 5 separate locations in France and England. Each is taken aboard a separate ship for the journey across the Atlantic. All arrive safely. With Pershing's address on one side, Ambassador Girard's rallying of Americans on the other, and communicated in a massive advertising campaign, the sale of this record was phenomenal. This was from recording industry historian David Goldenberg in The Discographer. George M. Cohan bought one for $5,000 at a Liberty Loan Rally. The 3,000 Miles from Home and Loyalty record was the highest-selling release of the nation's Forum from 1918 through the elections of 1920. Hopefully, words along the road to normalcy. Many more recordings were made over that time, some lost to time. Of course, our leaders were speaking about and dealing with national and international issues. The world leaders component to the nation's Forum is dramatically added by Eamon de Valera on his grueling tour of America, rousing support for Irish independence. Meeting in New York City, Galterman and de Valera agreed to record 3 of his speeches. The Irish Patriot, or The Cause, will receive 25 cents per record sold. The number of sales may be lost to history. What is not lost is the voice of Irish independence a century later.
It is still our mission to show the world the might of moral beauty, to teach mankind peace and happiness in keeping the law of love, doing to our neighbor what we would have our neighbor do to us.
More speeches or statements have been added to the initial Nations Forum recordings over the years. The Library of Congress truly presents the originals to posterity on their 100th anniversary, and the others when they come of age. The first recording of a general on a battlefield in history, 5 originals and 1 or 2 more, are gold-plated. His signature is deeply engraved into the metal. They were distributed toward the end of 1918 to President Woodrow Wilson, to Secretary of War Newton Baker, to the Pershing family, to the Missouri Historical Society in honor of their native son and for the people of his state. At the 100th, it is repurposed for display in Jefferson City and for travel for the enjoyment of Missourians. A fifth was given to Enrico Caruso to commemorate his 25th anniversary on the operatic stage. The greatest tenor performed at Liberty Loan rallies, including one in the St. Louis Coliseum, May 2, 1919. The Golterman Family Original was presented to the U.S. Army Band on stage at St. Louis's VP Fair in July of 1985. Army Chorus Master Sergeant James Golterman, soloist. It is on display in Brucker Hall, home of Pershing's own, Fort Myer, Virginia. The General and the Opera Guy. Across Missouri, across America, across the Atlantic. A moment in time, relived millions of times. On our phones, laptops, tablets, and whatever comes next, thanks to a visit to the Library of Congress by a tall, quiet St. Louisan in the fall of 1917.
3,000 miles from home, an American army is fighting for you. Everything you hold worthwhile is at stake. Only the hardest blows can win against the enemy we are fighting. Invoking the spirit of our forefathers, the Army asks your unflinching support to the end that the high ideals for which America stands may endure upon the earth.